So now we just have some sum up questions. So what, in your opinion, should the mission of television be?
Oh, I think there are multiple missions for television. Obviously, the journalistic informational mission is somewhat different from the entertainment, although they do overlap. I think at times journalism is too entertaining, and at times entertainment is too deadly serious. But in the best of worlds, I think they are somewhat separate. I think, you know, I'd like to think, particularly with the American system, that we do have a public service. You know, often in my lecturing around the world, there's been this, you know, well, you have this commercial system and we have public service, and we're funded by the license fee and we're funded by the government, but we serve citizens, you know, and then for a period there was an academic debate, you know, our television and other popular media simply serve consumers. They don't serve citizens. I said, well, citizens are consumers. Consumers are citizens. We can't make that kind of distinction. So I guess in the broadest sense, the medium should serve the society, the culture, and the public. And entertainment has always had a public function in every context, whether it's in the Greek theater or whether it's in you know, Shakespeare, or whether it's been the rise of the novel. That's a public function, and it serves the public. But when you lay it out that broadly, you don't really get much of what is the function, what is the purpose. And the purpose is to do all of that well. And there are different definitions of excellence and different, you know, of quality. I quarrel with Emmy Awards. I quarrel with Peabody Awards. There are probably 3 or 4 out of those several hundred that are on those lists that I wouldn't have put there. And I get called on them sometime. You know, people say, how did you do this? Well, you know, we had 15, 16 people arguing at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that's what happened. But I guess you know, I'm not trying to avoid that purpose question, but it's hard. It's really hard to know, especially when people who are doing it have different purposes. You know, make money, get my show on the air, sell products. It's such an enormous thing when you say television that you have to begin to break it up and say, what's the purpose of this and that? And part of the purpose in this country is always going to be to sell eyeballs to advertisers. Part of it is going to be, how do you do that? And for the creative producer, how do you do that and tell my story? And advertisers be damned, I'll get around them. I've never met a producer who didn't say they could get around standards and practices, advertisers, whatever.
How have television studies changed since you first started your career?
I think it's changed partly by becoming more accepted in the academy, but the other changes have to do with what we were just remarking about, that it recognizes different strategies for understanding this complex medium. So my goal was to talk about stories, to talk about, you know, to do what we call textual analysis, to say, okay, here's an episode of All in the Family. Let me tell you that there's more there than meets the eye. There's more there in this episode of Magnum than just a detective show. There is this richness to it, this complexity. And a lot of people still do that, and books are written about, entire books are written about series, the whole series, which is great because we need that kind of thing. One of the things that's been added is a lot of attention to diversity. A lot of television studies was really pushed forward by feminism, by feminist media studies. Women saying, wait a minute, you can't say that soap operas are all bad. You can't say that the pleasures we take in some of these things are pernicious. We're seeing things that you don't see, and that's what critics and academic analysis is about. And then there's always the political aspect, which we were involved with as well, to say there's not enough diversity. Your treatment of African Americans is pernicious. shouldn't be done this way, is demeaning. And that's been a through line through all of television studies. The other big shifts have been in part toward history on the one hand and industry studies on the other. So there are a lot of people now trying to do history, which is a lot easier. You know, I didn't have the VCRs. I didn't have the DVDs. I didn't have the online stuff. I did, as I said in your first question, one of your first questions, write from memory. I did get stuff wrong. There was an episode of Medic, a show with Richard Boone about acne. And and it was a dramatic show, it was a scripted show, and I don't remember if my memories of that are driven by that show or about my own adolescent problems, you know. So there are those things, but now with the access, there are rich histories coming out, histories of genres, histories of the work of actors. And on the industry studies side, very sophisticated analysis about the interplay of economics, policy, and programming. And that's just snowballing as the industry shifts. As, you know, cable systems rise and suddenly overtake network, and as studios founder because they don't know quite what to do with some of this stuff. And it's only going to get more complicated as the online stuff begins to break it up even more. I mean, the real question now, and the question for television studies, is what's going to happen to the advertising model? You know, if we're so segmented and fragmented that you can't get enough people for the advertisers to give you money to make programming, what are the creators going to do? What are the advertisers going to do? What are the distributors? And networks and now are essentially distributors. You know, they're publishers, whether they're cable or network. And so television studies, you know, some people are trying to sort of get ahead of that. One of my students, Amanda Lotz, who is at Michigan, writes about the industry and just came out with a new book, a small book, and I can't remember the title of it, obviously, but it's about the new formations that are coming through online stuff and people watching online and producing for online. And she, I think, is at the forefront of industry studies there. The other student, Elisa Perrin, who's here at Texas, created an online journal on industry studies. And her focus is on the interplay of multiple popular industries. She's very connected to the comics industry and the adaptation of comics to television. So they're very different strands, but trying to stay ahead at this point is really crazy.
Do you have any advice then for aspiring television academics?
Oh, find a good school and a couple of good professors and stick it out. You know, the academic world is changing rapidly as well. Job markets are tight. I think there is probably a rush toward studying online things. And a number of places now have renamed their programs screen studies. Everything from film to television to the computer screen. And so just as the industry is fragmenting and the culture is fragmenting, the field is fragmenting. And I think it's hard. It would be very hard for somebody to do what I did, you know. And it was fortuitous. It wasn't because I saw the future. I just liked television and wanted to write about it. And the fact that I was there early on was a great boon for me, and perhaps for the field of study. But I don't know if you can do that now. I don't know what I would write if I were trying to write a single book about television at this point. And it would be a rearview mirror book. It would be, what did television do? And I think it did great things.
Have you had any mentors throughout your career?
I've had advisors. I was always a little too maverick for mentors. I don't like the term very much. I like it in a one-on-one situation. I don't like for people to go out and try to be mentors. I don't like what's very common in the academy now for every department to assign a mentor to a new young professor. I say to those people, these new young people are my colleagues. Ask me anything and I'll tell you the best I can, give you the best answer I can, but I'm not here to give you, life-shaping skills. I'll give you life-shaping advice, but I'm not going to try to shape you in some way. That gets me in trouble sometimes because when I say I don't like the term, people think I don't like to be a mentor. And I have mentored a lot of people, but for me, the mentor, the Greek term is ephebe, not mentee, which is a made-up word, for the student or the colleague to select a mentor, not for a mentor to go out to seek. I don't like the power relation there. I don't like the inequality that's implied in it.
What would you say is your proudest career achievement?
I think I would have to say directing the Peabody Awards. I mean, the books and the articles are fine, and they certainly were fun, and I was delighted that they were recognized and helped change things. But the Peabody maintains its standards, and those standards will take something like a Filipino program that has 0 production values from a news organization and get a Peabody because of the content, because of talking about rag pickers on waste heaps. At the same time, the Peabody gave the Sopranos awards in 2 successive years, which is very rare, and the West Wing, I think, 2 years. Conventional in many ways, but to recognize a local television station for breaking a story that changed people's lives, and at the same time recognize something for 9/11 coverage is pretty remarkable. And some of the best moments were when the big guys, the network people, and especially the news people, but also the entertainment people, would go on stage, because it was all mixed, would go on stage after a small station in Colorado had just picked up their Peabody Award and say, whoa, these guys are doing important work.
Any career regrets?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's not a very important one. I wanted to write and produce for television.
There's still time.
Oh, no, no. The last time I tried to do that, I was about, I was about 40, and I was pitching to people, who were 28, 22. No, there's no time. So.
Well, our final question then is, how would you like to be remembered?
Oh, as a good teacher and a good father, good husband.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us today, Horace.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.